Okay, here we go again. So what I want to do in this video is talk a little bit about the different determinants for elasticity. These are like the characteristics that are for each like supply elasticity, demand elasticity, elastic versus inelastic. Okay, so how do I want to do this? Probably the best way that I'm going to draw this is I'm going to draw a really big circle. Okay, and then I'm going to have to draw another really big circle. Actually, that's a little bit better. Okay, so when we're looking at this, is this going to be enough space? Actually, no, it's not. We'll draw this again. Go, and there we go. So this is going to be our demand. And then this, can you see this? Be our supply. So we're looking at elastic versus inelastic, okay? So first thing we want to talk about is we're going to talk about what do they have in common? What determinants do they share? And there's a couple. So this is going to be elastic, and this is going to be inelastic. Okay, and then so right here is what they share. It's a characteristic of both. So one example is time. Okay, and so sorry, I've got a little bit of a cold. So if we're looking at time, so if it's measured over a broad time so broad time, short time, it makes it more elastic. Because if we go back to the part 1 video of elasticity, think about the fact that elasticity is substitutable. If I have to buy, like for example, an airline ticket, and I have 1 day to buy an airline ticket, it doesn't matter what the price is, I'm just going to buy it. However, if I have a whole year to find an airline ticket, I'm going to keep looking and find lots of substitutes. So that's why time horizon, a large time horizon, makes it elastic, and a short time horizon makes it inelastic. The second category that's true of both is alternatives. So if there's lots of alternatives, let me actually zoom in a little bit here, make my writing a little bit better. Okay, so if there's lots of alternatives, whether supply or demand, doesn't matter. In this case, there's lots of substitutes, like we talked about previously. Okay, but if there's not a lot of substitutes, for example, like heart surgery, there really isn't any substitutes to heart surgery. You're just going to pay whatever the price is. But lots of substitutes for, I think, like what's like pencils, like or pens. There's lots of different options for pens. Like Pilot G2, you can get a pencil, you can get a marker, you can get all sorts of different things. So that makes it more elastic. You're less influenced by the price. You're more influenced by the price, I should say. And then heart surgery, you're just going to pay whatever price there is. Kind of in that same vein, we're going to say specific brand. Okay, so the more specific a brand is, and then I'm going to say the more broad brand. So this is like an example of like Cheerios and cereal. If the price of Cheerios increases by $10, you're probably just going to find a substitute, which makes it more elastic. However, if the cereal as a whole increases by $10, you're less likely, or even broader than that, breakfast food or food in general. If food in general increases by $10, it doesn't matter, you have to pay that price. So the broader the brand, the more inelastic it becomes, and the more specific the brand, the more elastic. And then finally, the last one that's shared by both is kind of what we were talking about, is just narrow market and broad market. This one is very similar to the one we just talked about, but like we were saying, if it's a broad market versus a narrow market, like some people have very specific tastes, but usually there's like we talked about in the first video in part 1, like I want a specific kind of whole wheat bran muffin, gluten-free, whatever. The price of that increases. There's probably lots of substitutes to that. But the more broad the market, then like we talked about food, if the price of food increases. So anyways, these two are pretty similar. Actually, all three of these are pretty similar, but so you can group them as one. I broke it out just to make things less confusing. Okay, now we're going to talk about specific demand elasticities that are unique only to a demand elasticity. So the question asks you about which of these is elastic supply, then these would not apply because this is only for demand elasticity. And so we're going to do elastic and inelastic. So the first one is if it's a luxury versus a necessity. So if the good is a necessity, it is inelastic. But if the good is a luxury good, it is elastic. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory. For example, if I need something like gas, I would say gas is a necessity. Like there's not a lot of substitutes for gas, so I have to buy it. But for example, if I want a yacht, or something that's more of luxury good, maybe going to the movies, there's lots of substitutes for that. I can find a lot of different options for going to the movies. I could go play laser tag, I could go read a book, I could do other things instead of paying to go see a movie. Okay, then the last one that's unique to demand is your fraction of the budget. So this is a large fraction. If it takes up a big chunk of your budget, it's an elastic good. If it takes up a small fraction of your budget, it is inelastic. I think the best example for this is just thinking back to the previous one. Luxury goods, for the most part, are usually pretty expensive, and so because they're so expensive, they would take up a large fraction of your budget. Don't think too hard about this because you can find caveats to this. But just know that large fraction of your budget is elastic, and then small fraction of your budget is inelastic. And then finally, we have the ones unique to supply elasticity. And the only one I can really find that's unique to supply elasticity is specialized inputs. And this is like more broad, easily accessible inputs. So I would say a great example of this, if you are a producer, let's say you're Jared Diamond Store, and you want to make a diamond ring, you obviously need a diamond. Let's say the price of diamonds increases by $10,000. That's pretty expensive. Can you find a substitute for diamonds? There really aren't very many substitutes for diamonds. A diamond is a diamond, so you're just going to have to pay the price if you want a diamond ring. So that's why a specialized input is very inelastic versus more common inputs like, I don't know, like different types of metal. When making a ring, if the price of, I don't know, like titanium increases, then you could use gold, you could use silver, you could use all these different kinds. But more, or that's even broad, like you can even go like wood, for example, like redwood or cedar and all these different kinds of wood, because there's it's more broad, easily accessible inputs when making different things versus inelastic, more specialized inputs such as a diamond ring. If the price increases, you're just going to have to pay it because you need that specific input. Okay, that is everything for the determinants. Remember that this purple is the ones that are common to both. So if it asks you about supply or demand elasticity, doesn't matter, these both apply. These characteristics apply to both. Supply elasticity, these are only unique to supply. So if it asks you about demand elasticity and it talks about specialized versus broad inputs, that does not count. And then demand elasticity is unique to demand. And just another reminder, how we know if it's elastic or inelastic. If it's 0, between 1 and -1 is inelastic, and then greater than 1 is elastic in either direction. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. Adam out.